So, or you have to go comply with all new building. Some of the buildings are, sorry, right. But one wall was not classified as residential. And that has nothing to do with zoning. Okay, the building and zoning are completely separate in that way. Because I'm not sure what's changed. Oh, you mean from the garage? The garage thing? I don't know what's all of it. Yeah, I think they would probably get a variances if like these are variances or something. It's not a zoning law, it's not a zoning. Variances, development variances. In order to build the garage, once you build the garage, it is in violation of the goes of the property. It doesn't meet the required setback. It doesn't meet the rear setback, the side yard setback. It's almost going to be easy to make the road. It's up there. It's up there. Yeah, it's not really not. We're close to our back there, so we know what it says. Anyway, that's how all those little roads that mayor pictures back there are supposed to be back there, but okay. All right. You're quite welcome. Yeah, I am. What are you trying to say? Just because I'm the Jewish? I know you're Jewish. What are you trying to say? You are Jewish. That's irrelevant. I'm gonna go downstairs real quick. We've got a PDA, and then I'm gonna come right back when I'm hearing the presentation for Mike, and then I'm gonna excuse myself from the PDA. Okay. Well, we have one because it's
Okay. God, my fingers. No, it doesn't. Reset? Okay, we'll do that. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this September 3rd meeting of the of the Northfield Township Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Dignan is absent with notice tonight, and we're expecting Mr. Roman at some point. So I'll call the roll then. Mr. Roman is absent. Mr. Kuzno?
Here.
Chalkley here. Chick?
Here.
Iaquinto?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. I have you all have the agenda. I would like to make a couple changes because I've made mistakes. The minutes are August 20th instead of September 3rd at the bottom, under 11. And I would like to move the presentation by Michael Moran, Supervisor of Ann Arbor Township, up to under call to the public so that he doesn't have to be here all night. And
could that be after, how about after, you're meaning after the call to the public?
after call to the
Okay,
public.
thank
Yep,
you.
after. Yep. And I guess that's the only change. Oh, and then under old business where you see the articles 34, 40, 41, and 42, we are not recommending to the Board of Trustees tonight. We haven't had our public hearings on them yet. So if we're happy with them tonight, we will postpone action on them except for the scheduling the public hearings. So that's...
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Iaquinto, support by Ms. Chick. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No. Okay. I would like to mention kind of where we're at with the Biltmore request, just because I keep getting emails and phone calls, and I think there's some misinformation going on out there, and so I just would like the public to know kind of where we're at with the whole thing. At our last meeting, we made the request to get some studies, and right now, that's what's going on. We're getting a fiscal study, traffic study, sewer, and I believe water study. So that's taking a while to do, and we've made actually recommendations to Mr. Stolman on, well, Mr. Luan has done that, on different, not agencies, but consultants to do that. So they're getting that all together for the next month. Now, I can tell you that the September 17th meeting is going to be canceled, so we won't be doing anything in September with the Biltmore or Master Plan Amendment. And so anyone out there that's concerned about that can know that September, they don't have to worry about it. Nothing's really going on except the studies are being done. And we'll receive those when they're done, and we don't know exactly when that will be. So our next meeting will be October 1st. And so that's the soonest we would even do anything. Any activity, any action that this board would take on that whole issue will be on the agenda. So there's not going to be any surprises to anyone. It will be on the agenda, and so everyone can have that knowledge ahead of time and be able to come to the meeting and make their concerns known. So just watch. The Friday before our meeting, our agenda packet goes up, and then you'll see the agenda. We don't slip anything on at the last minute with something like that, so that's a big item. So anyway, and then after that, there will even still be further time. We'll be deliberating, thinking about things. If there's any action at all, it will also have to go out for notification to all of the municipalities and the governmental units that may need to comment on it, and that's a 42-day process also. So that, once that would happen, it could be months before we actually see anything, or do anything, or have the public hearing on any master plan amendment that may or may not even be recommended. So just to allay everyone's fears, nothing's going to happen next week or in September, so don't you worry about that out there. So, Mr. Luan, would you have any other comments on that? Did I make it clear enough?
Yeah, I'm going to try to have a handout available and just kind of keep it with the agendas at the desk back there for anyone who is interested. That's going to kind of lay out this process. I'll try to have that at our next meeting, which will be in October at this point because the second meeting in September is canceled. But as the chairman has just mentioned, this is a very formal process that there are certain very formal steps we have to go through based on the state legislation, and before we even send it out for public notice to the adjacent communities, it has to go to the Township Board. The Township Board has to approve it to go out for notice. And so, and we're not anywhere near that right now. I mean, we don't have anything to give anybody to even get to that point. You know, we're really just trying to determine if this is something the township wants to do. And I think some of the information, hopefully some of the data we collect from Biltmore with some of the folks that we had suggested will help shed some light on what the impacts, both positive and negative, might be for this project. So again, we're a ways off, and we have tried to keep this as transparent as possible. Whenever it's discussed, it's on the agenda, and we will obviously continue to do that.
Okay, good. Okay, well, now we'll have the call to the public. If anyone has any comments they'd like to make, please come up to the microphone. You have 3 minutes, and at about 2.5 minutes, I'll show you this, and then at 3 minutes, I'll show you this, and then please finish your sentence and have a seat. We need your name and your address, and we'd like to hear if you have anything to say tonight. Please address your comments to me, and there'll be another opportunity for a call to the public at the end. If we are approaching 10 o'clock, we may shorten that call to the public time to 1 minute per person, just because we're supposed to end at 10 o'clock at night. So just want to let you know that. It's not to diss anybody, it's just that we have this 10 o'clock that we're supposed to make, so just to let you know. Okay, anyone like to come up and share anything?
Good evening. My name is Dale Brewer. I live at 11548 East Shore Drive. I just have a couple quick comments. First, I'd like to suggest that maybe you table the minutes for tonight's meeting and have them forwarded to legal counsel for review of your motion, not because of anything in your motion, but for clarity purposes and for legal purposes regarding the Nowatzki situation, just in case something else would happen or come up later. I say your motion, I'm not asking that you change, I'm only asking that you protect yourselves in looking at it. In this particular case, again, we have a gentleman that stood up here at the last meeting and said, I'll pay my sewer bill, I swear I'll be in tomorrow. We're now 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks since then. It's been 90 days since he had notice. He still hasn't paid his sewer bill. Just one example of the man's not standing behind what he wants to do. So again, I would just encourage you to ask that you look at that motion, make sure that it has it has the legalese in it that needs to be in case something further would develop prior to sending it to the Township Board and having them have to deal with it at that time. That's really all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Ed Voitis. In an effort to get you guys out of here before 10, I'll be quick. 6235 Helmer Road. During the last Planning Commission meeting, it was brought up during the Nowatzki evaluation that the intersection at Whitmore Lake Road and North Territorial was rated a D or an E. I know that's pertinent to the Biltmore situation. Can you tell us how extensive the traffic study will be for Biltmore? Will it go all the way down to the south end of Whitmore Lake Road to the intersection? Will it cover the dirt roads, Helmer Road, Northfield Church Road? How far west will it go? All those areas will be impacted. And if they're only going to look at that intersection, I mean, it's already done. If they are going to do more, we'd like to know how extensive it's going to be because all those areas will be affected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, David Gordon, 5558 Helmer Road. I'll try to keep it brief also. The process that you're going through is obviously very transparent, and all the steps that need to be taken are mandated by the state. That's great. There were a lot of people that wanted to participate in that process through design charrettes, and I hope you'll still consider that. as part of the process that you're going through before you make a decision. There was a comment that our planner made last meeting that I was at that I've been thinking about, and it was a comment about how 5-acre zoning really isn't ideal from a purely planning perspective, and I understand that. But when I was thinking about it, in the classroom sense, it's not ideal, because if like Doug said, you have one house with 5 acres of lawn around it, that's not really good land use. What's happening in reality in our township is, and why I think 5 acres is so important, is because the master plan calls for 2 things, among others. One of them is preservation of open space and promoting farming. One way to promote farming in a pure planning perspective would be to upzone and take areas that are farming and go from 5 acres like they're zoned now to 40 acres. That's not realistic. That would be a takings. The farmers would go to court and say, our land, you're taking away the value of it, we can't sell it in 5-acre parcels now. So what other options does the planning committee have for promoting farming? One of them is to keep the 5-acre zoning. It's not going to result in our community of having a 200-acre farm have 40 homes on it, because there's not enough sand on these clay soils to find 40 septic fields. So what actually happens is that you, through 5-acre zoning, actually help preserve open space and promote farming. So that's, from a realistic standpoint, that's kind of what I was thinking about. The southwest quadrant of our township is also right next to Ann Arbor Township, where there's a lot of large farms. And when you concentrate farm properties together, it's good for the farmers, because so many farms today are rented to large farmers, and they don't have to move their equipment so far, which would speak to the southwest quadrant staying agricultural. And lastly, in terms of the Biltmore proposal, I think it's important to have the discussion about quarter-acre zoning subdivisions and sewers, because I believe that that's the bottom line for this developer. Is if he doesn't get quarter-acre or sewers, then he's not going to move forward. And I think he should be asked that at the soonest possible time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, welcome, Mr. Moran.
Thank you. If I can use your easel here.
Yeah.
I don't know how to turn it
We
on.
don't know how to do that. Howard's coming back up, but, I don't know. It's in the back room, too. Okay, thanks. Unfortunately, yes. Could save one for Ken. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, both for moving me up in the agenda and also for hearing Ann Arbor Township's concern about the proposed master plan change so early in the process.
Yep.
How's that? Okay, is that better?
Right.
All right, thanks. Okay, I know that our treasurer, Dellar DiPietro, came and spoke in the public call out some time ago just to express our concern when we first heard about the proposal. And I'm glad that I have this opportunity to talk to you all briefly about why it is that we are concerned and to explain the process basically that we went through to set aside and preserve some significant acres of farmland in Ann Arbor Township immediately adjacent to your study area, and also to give you an idea of the amount of effort and money that we've put into preserving farmland in this area. Ann Arbor Township's master plans in the 1990s mentioned a desire to protect farmland in the northern portion of the township. But that's really all that it spoke to at that point in time. At that point in time, it was a completely Republican administration, and now it is predominantly Democratic, although it's about almost half and half. And yet our goals in terms of farmland preservation are unchanged from the 90s essentially to today. After the in the late 1990s, we began to think about taking some real active steps to preserve farmland in the area. And because there was some questions from both our farmers and from our residents about the financial implications of trying to do that, we entered into a study that may be much like you're looking at now. I mean, we commissioned a cost of services study in 1999, and that study compared the cost of acquiring perpetual conservation easements with the cost that the added density would impose in terms of additional township services, roads, schools, and the like. And I understand that you guys also were commissioning a cost of services study as well. Our study essentially showed that it was cost effective to purchase conservation easements, even if the township paid the entire cost of acquiring those easements. As a result of that, we also did a survey of all of our residents to ask them and try to gauge their willingness to pay additional tax revenues to either acquire easements for preservation of farmland and promotion of farmland, or to increase, to pay for these additional infrastructure requirements that come with more dense development. And what we found out in our survey was that nearly twice as many residents were willing to pay additional tax revenues up to $100 a resident for 20 years in order to acquire and preserve farmland. About half as many were willing to pay half as much to support services for residential development. I don't know what such a survey would show in your jurisdiction, but that's essentially what it showed in ours. As we moved on in time, in 2001, we did a master plan update, a complete master plan update, and that one had some focus on preserving the farmland that we were looking at doing. And so it referred to the fact that what we did was, and what the master plan called for, was that we went out first of all and located all those areas in the township that were at least Class 2 soils, that were at least 20 acres large, that were contiguous to other large parcels that were zoned A1, which is a 10-acre zoning in our township for general agriculture, or zoned RC, which is recreation conservation, and that's a 5-acre zone that permits farming also in our jurisdiction. So we mapped out those areas and determined in the master plan that zoning would be the primary means of protecting those designated areas, and that we would go about creating a special zoning district and establish regulations for that district to set about in our efforts to preserve farmland. We looked at a number of ways to try to go about this, and ultimately we talked to people from other jurisdictions. We had people come from the Mission Peninsula, for example, to talk with us about purchase of development rights. Up there, they've preserved something like 4,000 or 5,000 acres there for cherry farming and the like. And so they came and talked to us about their program and how it worked. And by 2003, by August of 2003, our township had developed a new purchase of development rights ordinance. And under that ordinance, essentially, you would get, if some farmer volunteered to put his farmland into this program, say a 100-acre farm, we would do an appraisal that first of all determined what the value was if it were developed under the master plan, and second of all what the value would be if it were simply farmland, and then subtract the difference, and we paid the difference then to acquire those development rights Farmer continues to own the farm. The farmer owns it, can farm on it, can will it on, sell it as farmland, but essentially it's restricted to farmland and not other development. That was the same time that the city of Ann Arbor was going through its greenbelt exploration. And both our jurisdictions were talking about passing additional tax. In fact, actually theirs it was a rearrangement, but ours was a talk about whether we would impose an additional tax to accumulate the money to go about purchasing development rights. And ultimately we did. In August of 2003, our residents passed by a 78% approval rate, a 0.7 mils for 20 years to purchase development rights for farmland and open space. Now, since that point in time, so we went from August of 2003, I think the first purchase that came out, and I got to say the first was the hardest. Many of the farmers were very skeptical of the program that we were operating. But the first farmer that we ultimately worked with, we purchased 147 acre, the development rights on a 147 acre farm, paid him $1.4 million, and he still owned the farm. Well, it wasn't soon after that people began to see that this might be something that could work. Now, at that point in time, which, as I said, was April of 2006, the difference in the appraisals was about $14,500. So we were paid him $14,500 an acre for the development rights to the property. On the other hand, as we did that, and as we had gone about learning about ways to preserve farmland and open space, we partnered up with the Greenbelt, and the federal government has a program called the Federal Farm and Ranchland Protection Act. And they also will throw money at preserving farmland because farmland is being reduced so quickly by development throughout the country. So in this first purchase in April 2006, I think the federal government paid, I think on that one, the maximum they would pay was 5,000 acres. So they paid a little less than a third of the total cost, and the city of Ann Arbor and Ann Arbor Township split the rest of the cost. So we each paid approximately a third each. Since that time, we have preserved 11,000 acres in 2 large blocks. And these are the 2 large blocks that you see depicted here. This is our mutual boundary at Joy Road. So right up against Joy Road, we've purchased we've acquired the development rights of, as I said, 1,100 acres. Now, over time, the cost of that acquisition has changed, and during, after the financial meltdown in 2008, appraised values, because we only purchase under appraised values, so there's not negotiation, there's nothing like that. It's a strict third-party, independent, dual appraisal, and that's how the price is determined. And in that, the prices fell from 14.5. I think the last one we did was about 6,000 an acre, or maybe even less. And so it's been going down over that point in time from 2006 when we did our first one until now. We have one in the works now, and it looks like the values are just now starting to go back up for the development rights. But overall, for this 1,100 acres we've preserved, we've spent, or including the federal government and the state and the Greenbelt program, and a little bit of money here and there from the Washtenaw County, we have spent about $9.3 million to acquire those 1,100 acres. So that works out at about somewhat short of about $8,500 an acre for the total purchase price of that. As we went about doing that and acquiring this land over time, we began to understand some other things about farmland preservation in that area of our township. Most of this land was owned by old German farm families, and they had held it in their families for generations, been stewards of the land. They looked on it as essentially their retirement income, which was why we felt it was necessary to come up with some other way to recognize the value in the land that could be attributable to them without requiring it to be sold to developers to cash that out. The other thing that we began to see is that all of those larger farmers there were basically in cash crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans. But we began to run into more and more young people who were interested in much smaller farms close to the city of Ann Arbor to sell to restaurants, to sell to schools. The whole farm-to-table movement is really taken off considerably. It's a totally different kind of farming, as you might imagine. It's not heavily mechanized. It's own individual labor. And we began to see that these younger people were being kept out of farming by the high cost of land when it included the cost of potential development in it. And so one of the other things that's worked out really well for us is, so for one of the more recent ones, is this one here is about a 63-acre farm. And we started over here, a town educational farm. But actually, before I get to that, this little cutout here is a residential development that is they've just broken ground a few days ago. It was something we approved back in 2006, but with the financial meltdown and all, we extended the project for them, and that's essentially gone. That area, the master plans all indicated that one thing that might happen here is that we might permit some small residential developments, especially with clustering in there, so long as the result of that was that it preserved additional farmland. So this land is essentially this piece right here, was about a 220-acre farm. A piece of property. Actually, it was being farmed by tenant farmers, but it was owned by a development company. It had been owned by a development company for a long time. And at the time that we were just initiating our purchase of development rights program and the like, they filed a petition to develop that property. Ultimately, by December of 2006, we worked out an arrangement where they were able to build 38 residents around there, and they deed restricted the other 153 acres to farming only and gave it to us. So that what we've been doing there is running a township educational farm. It's like a farmer intern program. We've partnered up with some people from Michigan State University Organic Farm and the Food System Economic Partnership. And what's been happening there for the last few years is kids get to come in there. They select 2 to 6 people that come in there. They get to work on the farm for 2 years. Without cost to them, and they get basically schooled in farming and farming practices. There are also people there that can work with them to help them understand value-added products and such as that. The other things we've invested into this entire program is we also have changed our ordinance structure for farmland so that at this point in time, our ordinances permit a commercial kitchen of up to 2,500 square feet as a matter of right on agricultural land. You can apply for as a conditional use a larger one, but you can build one of 2,500 square feet at this point in time. And the first one we have is being established cross-patch area that says it's the food hub. What that was an old grain silo that one of the farm families owned, and that was sold. And some farmers, actually Richard Andrews, who owns Tantra Farm in Chelsea, is setting up there, and what they're going to be doing is various farming educational programs there. CSAs will be distributed out of there, and a bunch of value-added farm businesses are starting to move into that area. So I don't know if you know of a company called the Brinery that makes sauerkraut, pickles, and things like that, is going to be working out of there. Another township business called Locavorius that buys food and freezes it for distribution, CSA distribution in the winter, is going to be out of there. So that's the efforts that we're going into our program. I did want to mention, because I backed away from it, this parcel here. We acquired the development rights of that farm, and shortly thereafter, one of the farmer intern kids who had been in our first year's program there, his father had some money, and they were able to buy that property from the then owners at farmland value, so for about $3,500 an acre instead of the $15,000, $20,000 an acre, and they've established a new farm there, which is now selling produce out of several locations: the People's Food Co-op, the new Argus Farm distribution, and others. So we feel that that program is finally starting to take off and yield some benefits. We have some new farmers in our town, and farmland that previously was just being farmed as a tenant farm basis. So the point of all of this really is that we've spent more than a decade to create these two large blocks of farmland. And we've spent on our own and others' behalf $9.3 million to do it. So forgive us for being a little alarmed when we heard about a proposal that might be as small as quarter-acre lots immediately adjacent to that. We had already set aside that we were not going to be extending sewer and water to this area of our township so that we could go ahead and develop this program, and we spent a lot of time and effort doing it, and I think pretty successfully. Ultimately, our 2008 master plan, which was another pretty much review and rewrite of it, the 2008 master plan continues and explains the efforts that we went through, and it also points out that both the state and the federal governments in the, the State of Michigan Land Use Leadership Council report in 2003 favors farmland and open space preservation, as does the federal Farm and Ranch Land Protection Act. That's why we would hope that as you go through your master plan analysis here, that you would keep those efforts and the needs of that kind of a program in mind and help us be successful there. And even if you permit some changes in the area that you've done in your study area, we would hope that you would keep at least the 5-acre minimum in that area that's adjacent to our large block, where it has that border so close. Our other concern in this matter, and I am winding up, I thank you for your indulgence, is we have a great concern about traffic on Whitmore Lake Road, which I'm sure your jurisdiction shares as well. I've been in this building, in this room, many times at meetings about the Wally project and others, trying to find ways to relieve pressure on Whitmore Lake Road, because we all know it's got heavy traffic as it is, and we all know that the expressway is compromised frequently. Ann Arbor Township has the dubious pleasure of including the 2 triple-deck interchanges at 14 and 23. So we are responding to accidents in that area all the time. And it's not infrequent when one lane or more than one lane of 23 gets shut down. And Whitmore Lake Road then becomes the only really other north-south alternative for moving traffic through the area. So we understand that you're going to have a traffic analysis there. I might suggest, if you would permit me, that we are both members of WATS, and WATS has some traffic models that can assist. So I asked Ryan Buck, who is the the director there, if they had a model that could assist in understanding traffic flows on Whitmore Lake Road. And he said, yes, that they do. They have a model that will, not only if you can tell them how many additional residences will be put in there, will show the additional traffic burden, the traditional traffic analysis that may be included in what you're already doing. But they also have a model that will show what happens if 23 is shut down or portions of 23 is shut down. It runs simulations and you can get a better understanding of what the traffic situation will be there. I think the last thing I really want to say is that I had heard, and I don't know who, but that there were some expressed concerns that Ann Arbor Township was, asking you guys to look at not having denser development in this area, but at the same time, we were engaged in a huge project on Nixon Road and an additional smaller project. I can see how one might think that, but as a matter of fact, if you understand the facts, it's really not so. The land that it is, the large development is being explored is this area. There was large parcels that had been owned by Don Nixon, and although it's currently in Ann Arbor Township, in 1994, the city and the township reached a boundary agreement after decades of infighting over annexation issues. And starting January 1st, 2008, the city can annex any of this property within the freeway ring that goes across it. That includes this property. This property has been optioned now to some developers, and they are applying for annexation into the city of Ann Arbor so that they can develop in a more dense way with water and sewer in that area. And in addition, I would just point out that it's separated from the rest of our farmland by a major expressway, which is a pretty clear delineation between our two jurisdictions. The only other project that I could think one was talking about is this 38 unit one that I mentioned before that resulted in us acquiring without cost 53 acres that's dedicated to farmland preservation. So again, I thank you very much for hearing our concerns this early in the process, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Mr. Iaquinta?
Yes, I'd like to make a statement and ask a question. In respect to that property on Nixon, in my understanding, it's still going to impact the traffic on 23.
I haven't seen any traffic studies for it yet. I do know that traffic studies are commissioned primarily because there are serious traffic problems on Varnum Road. And I know that in talking to Jeff Kahn at the City of Ann Arbor, I know that they have slowed the project up at this point, looking for a traffic solution for that area. I haven't heard anything about what effect it'll have on 23 traffic because I don't think we know at this point in time yet what the price point of those residents will be, so we don't know if people will be working in the city of Ann Arbor or they'll be coming from the north or the east, as a lot of Ann Arbor's workers do come from.
And then the other question I have, if that's annexed by Ann Arbor, the city, what will Ann Arbor, the township, receive from them for that process?
Nothing. This was, the short answer on that is that in the 60s and 70s, even into the 80s and early 90s, the township was at war with the city because the city was using its sewer and water systems as annexation weapons. If somebody's septic system failed, they wouldn't permit that person to hook up to the city system unless they annexed. So there were a bunch of lawsuits pending. There were suits in the Boundary Commission, and there was a lot of negotiation that went on. That's prior. My first involvement in Ann Arbor Township politics was when I was elected to the, well, actually I was on the Planning Commission in '92 for 1 year, and then on the board starting in '96. But a previous board in 1994 reached an arrangement with the city, and we passed mutual policy statements. So it permits the city. It had a number of provisions that are no longer relevant because it dealt with what happens if somebody's system fails in the meantime. Those years have passed. But starting January 1st, 2008, the city can initiate annexation from any of the islands in the township. And the township agreed that we would not object. They agreed then as an exchange that they wouldn't seek development outside of that freeway ring. When you get to the far portion, actually even over here, the far portion that follows the freeway ring, when you get down here, it follows the river like that, but otherwise it's the freeway.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Yeah, I drive by Tillian Farm all the time, and Green Things Farm is that one little one. It's an incubator for farmers, so that's quite an interesting project. Ms. Chick, do you have a question?
I do have a question. That's all Ann Arbor Township there that's on that map, or there must be more missing? It's not bigger than that?
Ann Arbor Township goes up to this dark line, which is Joy.
And
But how
which
far
way?
east and west,
Yeah.
sir?
Dixboro. How far do we, what's our boundaries?
Yes.
When you get out here, Joy Road, the eastern boundary is Dixboro.
Dixboro,
okay.
If Dixboro went straight
Right.
down, it curves in, but if it went straight down to Clark, and then our western boundary is Maple Road.
Okay.
So we include on the eastern side, Washington Community Colleges in our jurisdiction. That's our easternmost part of it.
So you have more ag area than what's being shown on that map, or is that it?
This is basically it. We have an overlay district. Initially, we established as all of these master plans from 2001, 2005, 2008, all talked about preserving 2 large blocks in over here. Ultimately, we had some other farmers who wanted to add to those properties, some smaller farms, like 10 acres that we were buying. I think the largest one was like 220 acres. The smallest one was maybe 60 or something like that. We started looking at it. We're now acquiring a couple of 10-acre ones in some are a bit farther over here. They're over by Domino's Farms.
Yep.
So they're on the east side of Earhart, backing up against the expressway.
Okay, so at the point where you were looking to preserve farmland, that township was pretty well developed, right? You didn't have a lot of ag area left.
No. Yeah, the question was ag designation, not preserved land.
Right.
There's a lot of ag.
Yeah.
Most of this land in here is zone agriculture.
Okay.
In the northern part, all the way across our jurisdiction. It's been kind of a historic holding pattern. So there are places where people come. So they're doing some development. We have water and sewer in this area of the township, and we don't have any water and sewer service up here.
Well, if you look at our map, all that white area there is zoned ag. We've been doing a really good job of keeping our open spaces in ag areas. So, yeah, we don't have a lot of development.
All of this area is all ag. It's over 2/3 of our township.
And we can't put developments on roads that aren't paved, so we only have a few options for where to put developments if we want them. If we want them. We're still thinking about it, but, so that's going to be that way for a very long time.
Well, there's some other interesting aspect on that is this development here, which is just going on right now, is our very first private wastewater treatment plant service development. So it's 38 residences around that. I know we have a petition from somebody down here that wants to do a similar sort of thing on the private wastewater treatment plant, and we have a meeting coming up to speak to them about it. But that's another issue. Actually, that's a kind of an unusual one because there's 110 acres that's zoned agricultural, and then below it is 55 acres. I'm trying to figure out how this is. Yeah, so there's 100. 110, and then 55. And so the 110 acres is zoned agricultural. It's in our agricultural preservation zone. The 55 is zoned for, I think, 1 acre lots, or 2 acre lots, 2 acre lots. And the unusual thing at the moment is, I think what we're going to hear from the people coming to talk to us is that there are some places that perk on the farmland, the 110, but there's no place that perks on the 55. So, you know, it may be that somebody will be suggesting that perhaps on the farming we could have a joint drain field or something in the service of 55. I don't know what they're going to ask for. I know there's somebody coming to talk to us later this month.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This
Thank
was
you.
very interesting. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll move on and get on with our meeting here. Correspondence, we did receive an email from, well, something in the mail actually, from Barton Hills, and I passed that out. It's about their aquifer. So we'll be looking at that in association with the master plan potential amendment. Also, so you have that to read. And that's all I have. So Board of Trustees report, Ms. Chick?
Board of Trustees met August 26th for a workshop meeting. Bids for the final phase of the non-motorized path were open. We'll be making a decision at our September 9th regular meeting. Candidates for the Planning Commission opening were interviewed. That decision will be made at our next meeting as well. We also have 2 candidates for the Huron Watershed Council that will be voted on at that same meeting. There was also a presentation by Luke Kidder regarding a countywide special assessment for road repairs and maintenance that the Washtenaw County Commissioners will be voting on in October. If it is passed, we anticipate having North Territorial and Northfield repaired as well as East Shore.
Okay, great.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a ZBA rep here tonight, and our staff has left. Mr. Luan, do you have a planning consultant report?
Yeah, we had our required pre-application meeting today for the Nowatzki Trucking site plan with the understand they still have to get conditional use approval of Township Board, but that's a required step in the process, and they will be submitting a site plan within the next few weeks. We have a pre-application meeting Friday morning for the Northfield Township Library expansion, and that will be a meeting to, again, it's a formal step in our site plan review process to go through the plans for the library expansion, and that will occur here at the township offices.
Okay. So the Nowatzki Trucking is moving ahead even though they don't have the final conditional use approval from the Board of Trustees. When would they be able to get that? October?
They could get on to the next, it really depends on when they can get their information together.
Because it's next Tuesday is their meeting. Right.
Yeah, in theory, as we left the office today, they were talking to Jennifer, because Howard was gone, and they're trying to determine if they could make that meeting or it'd be the following meeting to get on Township Board agenda.
Okay.
And it would have to be on the agenda by
It'd have to be on the agenda by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's another month for them. Okay. And we will be seeing them again as a site plan, and we can approve or disapprove of portions of that and, you know, tweak it as necessary, correct?
Yeah, they have to submit a site plan that meets all of our site plan review standards.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Iaquinto?
For it to go onto the Township Board agenda, it's not up to the applicant at this point. It's up to...
No, it should be moving along.
Right, I mean, I just
Right.
wanted to clarify that, because I...
Right.
So...
So, but
it has to go on the agenda.
it has to get on the agenda.
Yeah, the question, they asked me today during our site plan pre-application meeting, when are we on the Township Board agenda? And I don't know when they're on, and so I
I'll
put-
ask tomorrow.
Yeah, I put them in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had them get together with Jennifer as they left the office, and she
Okay.
told me that the agenda hadn't been set yet for the Township Board meeting next week.
Okay. All right. We have no public hearings today, so we're on to old business. Our first item is the Whitmore Lake North Territorial Overlay District, and we've been looking at this for a bit, and Mr. Luan has made a few more changes, so would you like to go through this with us? Again.
Yes, if I can
Graphics
pull it up here.
Yeah, graphics better. I have a lot of spelling corrections, but I won't bring those up.
Let's see here, hold on. Is this the right one? Technology. Yes, this is our revised Whitmore Lake Overlay District. We've talked about this in previous meetings. We made a few minor tweaks to this ordinance based on our conversation last time. Those are shown and I think underlined and strike through. There was not a whole lot here, actually. We changed a few of the uses that we had talked about last time. Took out some of the, took out some of the uses you guys wanted me to take out. And there really wasn't a whole lot of changes in the previous ordinance. And what I asked last time is if you guys had anything, really study this and come back and we can talk about any other changes you might want to see. The other thing that I want you to remember is if we do push this on for a public hearing, is that we can still make adjustments at the public hearing.
Right.
And particularly if people show up for this, if they have concerns or questions, we can always tweak it or make changes at that point. So even if this isn't exactly perfect, if it's in any kind of shape to at least get in front of the public, in front of the public, which I think it is, that's what I would hope would come out of tonight's meeting, is that
Right,
this
me
gets
too.
pushed along for a public hearing.
Okay. Well, okay, so I'm continuing to read this and have a couple comments. We just don't have any, there's a page number at the bottom, so this might help. When it says Whitmore Lake North Territorial Overlay District in the bottom, in the footer, it'll say 53-4. So the 4 is like the page number, so that'll help us find things. I don't know, at the top of the first paragraph, what is section 36-345? We don't even have that. And so...
Where's that at?
Page 53-4.
53-4.
With this drawing.
Oh. That is probably a typo, and we will fix that.
I was looking around for it, and I can't seem to find it, so...
Okay.
Okay, so we need to fix that. And then on page 53-5, I wonder, where do we address building height? We're addressing it in all of the other places, like when we were looking at enterprise service and limited industrial and stuff, it talks about height. Is that the underlying
Yes.
height? Okay.
Yep, the underlying height, if a standard is not shown in this overlay district, the underlying standard would apply.
Okay.
And if that's, that's how this would work, I could make that more explicit if that would be helpful.
Well, I was just wondering if somebody wanted to build a hotel or something, and we only have heights of like 45 feet or 50 feet or something, and they want a few stories, would that not be enough? I'm just wondering if there's a way to deal with those kind of things.
Sure. Yeah, we could add an overall height to the dimensional standards in here. Because right now it's just a default. Whenever you don't see anything, it's a default to the underlying district. But if you would like to include some height standards, we certainly could do that. I've done that in other overlay districts.
That's a great catch, because it's a prime area that could have hotels.
Well, right. So, or, I don't know, a hospital, or who knows what, and or apartments above retail, in which case we might want more than 45 feet or 50 feet, which is the highest I saw in any of the districts. But then again, do you want something that's 70 feet tall and then next to something that's 15 feet tall? You know, would that look really awkward? You know, but over time, I think this area is going to rise up rather than be flat.
Okay. I mean, that's a good point. I'll certainly take a look at that.
Okay.
And maybe provide some examples of typical hotel, Holiday Inn type hotel or something like that.
Just, there's a fair amount of them in Ann Arbor at exits similar to ours.
Yep.
They seldom get more than 3 stories, any of those things over there. I mean, it seems like near Briarwood, right up here at Plymouth Road.
Is that because they only want 3 stories, or is
I'd
that
imagine it's
all they
probably
allow?
it fits, well, that's a good question.
But if you look at Plymouth Road, though, there's, I think there's 7 or 8 stories, 7 or 8 floors there.
Some of them,
You think?
Yeah.
like Hawthorne or the Microtel, or I don't know. I'd have to go look,
Yeah.
but anyway, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure that we're
interesting.
allowing some, you know, heights if appropriately.
Those are key changes, though. Wouldn't that be key change?
Yeah, we'd want to, we could still bring that back. I could insert that, and you could talk about that at the public hearing. Or we could bring the whole thing back if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, I could provide some examples. In heights greater than the underlying district, we could make a conditional use as well, so that we'd have some additional review,
Okay.
require public hearing, that sort of thing. So, you know, maybe heights above and beyond the underlying district might be possible under certain circumstances, but it would require a public hearing. That might be a good way to go.
I mean, I personally would like to see it before we send that to public
public
hearing,
hearing.
because that, to me, that's a major change.
Okay.
And, you know, that gives time for whoever the board may appoint to the PC to get involved and get caught up too, and maybe have some changes or input too.
Okay.
Because Janet, you did say that should happen at the next meeting?
Yep, September 9th.
Okay.
Okay. Please butt in, anybody, if you've got other issues associated with this.
Besides spelling.
Besides what?
Spelling.
Besides spelling. I think I caught all the spelling. Okay. Well, I have another question on page 53-6 about the single-family dwellings. Just wondering how this fits with the drawn boundaries, because it's a permitted use, single-family dwelling, and the drawn boundaries of our Whitmore Lake overlay district, do we, right. I just,
It's really to cover any existing single-family homes that might be in the district, so we're not making them non-conforming.
right,
And so they have to meet the underlying zoning standards. So that's the asterisk. That's a,
okay. But if somebody bought a vacant piece of property and wanted to build a house on it, then now it's permitted. Okay, say, okay, this isn't going to happen, but say they wanted to buy the Myers site and put a mansion on it or whatever. That would be now permitted, correct?
it would have to meet, the intention is that we wouldn't promote single-family homes in these areas,
That's what I thought.
but that if there happened to be one on a properly zoned, in one of the ag zones or one of, in a residential zoned area, that they have to meet the underlying residential zoning district. So it certainly isn't the intent to promote a residential home.
Right.
And we could certainly clarify that as well. And if that's what you guys are thinking, if you don't want, am I correct in my thinking that we wouldn't want to promote that in one of our commercial or industrial districts?
Right.
Yeah.
That, I didn't think that would be appropriate in the commercial, you know, although if there's a 10-acre parcel, and nobody's going to do that, I can't imagine, but you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, the only reason we even have that in this district is to cover some of the existing homes that might be there, so we don't want to make them non-conforming so that they
Right.
can't get mortgages if they try to refinance and
Right.
things like that. And we certainly could be more explicit in that regard.
Okay. I would just like to know how that plays out, really.
Yeah.
And then I guess I need to see the overlay district for that. Okay. Page.
Didn't we have a discussion last time about potential businesses that would become non-conforming that would get kind of squeezed out of the district here?
Yeah, we'll get to them in the,
Okay.
hopefully we will. Yeah. I thought we were going to eliminate golf courses, but it's still here. Did I misunderstand our conversation?
I didn't have it as coming off. I may not have written that down.
Okay. And then I have a question about groceries. This is under commercial uses, and you go groceries, bakeries, and similar self-serve units without drive-in. And I've been thinking about drive-ins. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, a bank, I guess you could drive up to banks, but I guess we're not allowing banks with drive-ups either, according to this.
What page you on?
Page 53-7.
Midway.
Middle of the page.
Yep, just above the middle of the page.
We don't want to exclude banks with drive-through either.
I didn't think so.
We want to encourage that because that's a prime use,
Right, well,
for the frontage of areas.
right. Industrial uses. Yeah, banks are not on here. It's probably in one of the underlying.
So and again, this language is taken out of the existing ordinance.
It is.
But that doesn't mean we have to keep it.
Right.
So we want to make sure we're not excluding drive-in type facilities or drive-through type facilities.
Drive-throughs.
Right?
Right.
What does that even mean? Groceries, bakeries, and similar self-serve units without drive-ins. I mean, how is that self-serve?
I don't know. Well, sometimes they have these things that are they look like little gas stations, but you can drive up and get your coffee through a window, in your car on your way to work. You seen that? Well, that's Tim Hortons, but I've seen a little.
Like the coffee pot, the bear claw.
Yeah, bear claw stuff, yeah, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I'm just asking the question, because it's permitted, but,
Yeah.
but but without the drive-in, and I'm wondering why drive-in is eliminated. Well,
Are drive-ins and drive-throughs permitted elsewhere in this list? I mean, we don't want to discourage a McDonald's or a Burger King, do we?
I don't think so. So we've got restaurants here, and they're permitted, but it doesn't say anything about drive-ins, so.
All right, I will go through this again. We took all the existing zoning districts, took all the pretty much word for word and dropped them in here.
Right.
But doesn't mean we can't change it.
Okay, because maybe we can change it in our underlying general
Yeah.
commercial, where is it,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, there's no banks on here, so I don't know where banks, under commercial uses, would banks be under that? Okay. But banks are in the underlying, well, I thought they were in the underlying ones,
Yeah, they'd be in the
in
industrial.
the limited industrial,
Yeah,
and,
yes.
I suspect they're in there, and so they would be covered in that, but we'll find it. Okay. Okay. And then, looking down, I see restaurants are permitted, and then a little lower, it says outdoor seating and/or service associated with a restaurant has to be conditional. Now, why does that portion of it have to be conditional when restaurants are permitted?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but a lot of communities will require outdoor seating to be conditional to afford an little extra review of the project.
Little extra review?
Yeah.
Because
Because there's an outdoor seating element, there's extra property, I mean.
there's a picnic table, well, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Because there's a thought that it's more intensive
More
use,
intensive.
having outdoor, perhaps having music outdoors, having things that might affect neighbors in maybe a greater way than an enclosed building might have.
Okay. Yeah. With music? Okay.
Residential area either.
Right, yeah, right.
But that would be that would be the reason why.
Okay,
We'd require.
that's the why.
Yeah.
Well, the outdoor seating might bump your parking requirement up because you got more seats available outside the building. Normally, you're just concerned within the building itself. Then you get inside the building and outside the building, now you've got
Might be more.
a lot more. I mean, maybe I'm just guessing.
Yeah,
That's
I
kind
think
of
it's just,
thing.
it's potential more external effects to
Okay.
the area.
Okay.
Now, is there great external effects? There could be.
Okay.
You know,
All right, I'm just asking the question.
yeah.
All right, I'll leave that alone. All right, under showroom, a little further down, showroom for sales of new cars and equipment. I thought we moved it to conditional, but maybe I'm wrong in our discussion. Does anybody else remember?
I bet Ken
No.
would.
Ken would remember. Okay.
Do you want
I
to leave
thought
it?
the mobile home one was one, why we put it as a conditional.
Maybe it was the
We
opposite. We moved it
eliminated
from
it.
conditional to permitted.
Well, I don't show that as a change, though.
No, actually, because I have the
Yeah.
original one from the last meeting where I was double checking everything as we were going through. Well, we could check on that. And I thought we eliminated mobile home and trailer court sales and repair,
Right, I
but
thought so too, just
Yeah.
got rid of it altogether.
just got rid of it.
Okay.
Okay. So that's all I have on that page. Does anybody else have anything on that page? No? Okay, and then 53.8, well, here's where it talks about drive-in facilities. Oh, and here, I don't know, I was wondering what's the definition?
A drive-in facility is typically, and there's a definition in the ordinance, typically a facility where you're served in your car.
Like the old A&W style?
Yeah.
That stuff?
Yeah. Drive-in like a Sonic, now they have Sonic.
Yep, Sonic's
you know.
like that.
Okay,
So that would
Okay.
be a conditional use.
Daily
Okay.
Burger.
And there has historically been a, potential issue with drive-in facilities
Loitering,
due to people hanging out.
yeah.
And
Okay.
so years ago, this was determined to be something that was maybe we should take a little extra look at.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's the case anymore, but you'll find this in a lot of zoning ordinance drive-ins as requiring a little extra review of a community.
Okay.
Drive-through is very different. Drive-through is you're just picking up your stuff and going.
Okay. Well, I'm okay with leaving it then conditional.
Can we go back just on 53.7, just, do we have a definition for agricultural services?
Where is it?
It's a third of the way
Oh, I
from the
see.
bottom.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, is that like fixing equipment that's agricultural, or is that having a roadside stand? Is that, yeah,
Well,
tractor supply?
It might be
It's a retailer. I mean,
grain
that's-
elevator. I mean, what would be an agricultural service?
Yeah, I will look to see if we have a good definition for agricultural service, but it could be, I know in other communities I work in, we've got a fertilizer guy that we call an agricultural service. crop CPS, crop production service. They have businesses all over the state, and they do. It's like an industrial.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It's like an industrial park,
Okay.
and they have fertilizer.
And they warehouse it or
Yeah.
something?
Yep. So
Okay.
that's what I would think of, and I'm sure that came out of the industrial district.
Okay. Well, does anybody have anything else on this one? Okay, so we'll get another tweak and see it again, October.
Well, here's one here. Space vehicles and parks. Are we talking like outer space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's currently in, I think, our RTM district, our
Okay.
Research, Technology, and Manufacturing.
And we're allowing it to be permitted, so maybe we'll be the only place building something that'll go to outer space. Yeah. Okay.
Since NASA's been shut down, right? So,
Okay. All right.
And there were some questions last time about some of the existing businesses on Whitmore Lake, some of the folks that have outdoor storage of materials.
Open air.
And those would be permitted. I tried to clarify that in the memo that I sent you guys, is that the underlying zoning districts would still apply. They would not become non-conforming. They would be permitted under that. And there's another question about Nowatzki. I think someone said you just approved something that no longer would be permitted, and that's not the case. Automobile service stations are clearly a permitted, or I don't know if it's permitted or conditional. I think it was a permitted use in the district. And so it just wouldn't, so I tried to address that in the memo, but
Okay.
I don't think we're creating, the idea certainly is not to put anybody out of business. We're not trying to create nonconformities here.
Yeah, the concern about the open air was, I think for expansion purposes, you know, like if the mulching person wanted to make it bigger, I don't see where that's economically a viable thing. I mean, it seems like the land would be more valuable for something more than mulch, but you never know, so.
Yeah, and if this takes off, if this district, you know, begins to take off and things start to happen, I think exactly what you said is the goal, is that some of this property value becomes too valuable for some of those types of land-intensive businesses. And they will just simply go somewhere where the land is cheap.
Okay,
Could you include a map as well? Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, actually, we are supposed to get a map tonight, Gene.
I have a map, it's on my desk. And I did not
Okay.
bring it tonight.
Okay.
I brought the zoning books, I didn't bring the map.
Well.
Yeah, it's a map, I do have it, and it follows the old overlay district. But
Okay.
I'll include that in your stuff next time.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, this will come back to us. Let's move on to the residential office district.
Okay, oops. Hold on.
Got it? No?
Okay, oops, wrong one, sorry. I'm trying to save paper here, I'm trying to be good. Okay.
Okay.
These were some minor changes that you guys asked for in the residential open space district, as well as a few others, and I'll just go through each of the districts as we go. And this is kind of in our ongoing review of all the zoning districts within the township. And essentially, this is just really a cleanup and clarification of some of these districts.
I mean, we could see it. I mean, it's all the areas that you either have
Yeah,
Yeah.
blocked
yeah,
out
unless you have
or
any real,
underlined.
unless you have any real questions. I did want to bring up one thing. I brought a map today, because we did have some, see, I did bring one map, Jen.
Yeah.
We talked about, here we have these districts, and we're going through the time to change some of them. And how much property do we actually, how much property do we actually have zoned in some of these districts? Because early on in this process, we talked about the potential of consolidating a few of the districts that might not have a lot of property within these districts. So what we did here is highlighted the districts we're talking about tonight: the residential office district, limited industrial, general industrial, enterprise service. And so these are the properties within Northfield Township that we actually have these districts now. And so, our general industrial, we have some out here east of the railroad tracks along Territorial. Limited industrial, we have this area west, or kind of straddling both sides of Whitmore Lake Road. This area was added to the industrial 3 or 4 years ago. We've got little general industrial up in the northern part of the township. But there's, these are pretty decent chunks. We also have a fair amount master planned in this area for, well, now it's the Whitmore Lake area, but we have some area that's kind of planned for industrial. I wouldn't really propose changing of these, but if you look at the two other areas, we have an enterprise service area that encompasses a very limited spot, and then even a less, even a smaller area. The only place in the entire township that is RO, residential office, there's two teeny little spots here. Now, I just wanted to bring that to your attention that these are, these spots are very small, and we could look at some consolidation. I'm not prepared tonight to talk about what we could do with these, whether we come up with just an office designation or something. But for the entire township, we've got a lot of, an entire district shown on the map, and then you try to find it, and we've got about eight or nine properties here, and about maybe 10 very small, some of them perhaps unusable properties there.
Well, Doug, the residential office, which is the smallest, is adjacent to what?
Yeah, it's right next to they got a little bit of, little space with this highway commercial spot, but it's adjacent to the enterprise service. Now, the enterprise service does allow quite a variety. It's
right.
It's a decent district, and this is enterprise service district is where the self-storage place is.
Yes.
And so we do allow quite a wide variety of uses in the ES zone.
Why not lump? Is there any harm with putting the residential into the enterprise?
We certainly could make sure there is no harm to doing that, but yeah, that might be a
because
good.
To me, a lot of their uses are harmonious.
Yeah, yep.
And it cleans up the zoning in that area right now. Then it would do that.
Yeah, I mean, we made an interpretation years ago, for example, that the All-Star Alarm was acceptable in the RO district, the residential office district. So yeah, I think that's probably. They are relatively contiguous to one another. That might be a good consolidation.
I mean, instead of us addressing this now, then why not just look at doing that and lumping it into it instead of sending this to the board twice? Because then, to me, it looks like we're not planning properly and thinking things out. If you could check and make sure there's no harm in doing so.
Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to. I put these on the map, and it became clear to me that I kind of suspected this, but, here we are going through this exercise, and there's like 8 lots that are zoned in one of these designations.
Right.
So
just leave that little tiny piece, the other yellow spot.
Wow.
yeah, and I'll have to look at the developability of this parcel right there, to be honest.
Yeah.
That way you could just eliminate.
Right, we eliminated the AR2 district.
And again, it just, as
Yes.
time evolves, it just makes sense to
Yeah.
look at this and
Mhm.
consolidate some of these where it's feasible and realistic.
Okay. Well, if
Okay.
you guys think that's okay, I mean, I'll go ahead and look at consolidating the RO and the ES to see what that would do. I think the industrial categories are still fine, because
Sure.
there are some significant businesses that have those designations.
Okay. So our comments about the residential office district are not without
Won't be
value.
relevant, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I do
yeah.
have some comments, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out that.
Yep. Okay. So on page 2 of the, under conditional uses and the residential office district, well, it's 34.03, 6. A dwelling unit combined with an office, provided that the proprietor of the office resides in the dwelling unit. How is this different from a home occupation?
Well, it certainly could be home occupation.
Well, that's what I was thinking, you know?
Yeah.
If the person who owns it and lives there. But it's a conditional use here, and home occupations are permitted uses. So we could just eliminate number 6 if that was not going to be an issue.
You know, unless that was a new build where someone had a office with a small dwelling attached to it. Maybe the office was the primary use. Where a home occupation is a little different. You know, home occupation is you're in a home and you're using part of your home for your business. You know, this indicates a dwelling unit combined with an office, which I think is a little different. It's trying to, I think what they're trying to get to is you've got an actual office in an accessory dwelling to the office rather than a home occupation.
Then home occupation.
So I think it's kind of a little bit different of an animal.
Okay,
Kind of almost like a live-work situation.
okay.
But I
I'll
mean,
accept
if we
that.
look at combining this RO and enterprise, it's kind of, it's mute though, isn't it?
Maybe. Right, well, unless we have homes in the enterprise service, well, maybe we don't.
I don't believe there's any homes in that.
Okay. Well, then there's probably homes in the,
Across the street there are, but that's not
Yeah.
in the enterprise.
are there homes in the RO district? No?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
No homes in the
No
RO
homes in the RO district. Well, you know, residential office district, I don't know. It's a transition district, really, you know, so. All right, well, I'll leave it alone. Okay, page 34.5, under E, the height regulations. I figured, you know, why use 100 words when 20 will do? So, under the height regulations, I said, except as otherwise provided in section 10.01G herein, structures shall not exceed 2 stories or 35 feet in height. Because I don't think it matters if it's an existing principal structure or a new principal structure. We're just saying they can only be 35 feet or 2 stories. So we can eliminate some language there.
Okay.
Yeah, we already took out that. Oh, no, we didn't. It's still there, right. Well, no, that's not a ratio. The floor area, yeah.
If you could get me that verbiage you just said,
Sure, actually, since Laura sent me the Word document, I could just track
Okay.
changes and fix all the misspellings and things like that.
Okay, well, hopefully there's not too many misspellings.
No, this is pretty good. This
Yeah.
is pretty good. Okay. Anybody else have anything else in the residential office district?
Just quickly, how does home occupation differ from offices of architects, engineers, surveyors, and similar professionals? Is that like whether you have employees or not that would be coming and going, or customers would be coming and going?
Yeah.
So home occupation, if you just have your own little business running out of your thing and you do all your business away from your office at home versus having people coming to you, including employees?
Yes.
Okay.
Key is employees. That's a
It
big
doesn't
key.
clarify that. I guess that's a question.
We have a definition for home occupations,
Oh,
though,
okay,
and
so it's-
I believe you can have some employees at a home occupation, but maybe it's a conditional at that
yeah,
point.
In any event, the difference is it's a straight office versus you're living there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Oh, okay.
Okay. Anything else there? No? Okay. So we can schedule this one for a public hearing,
Well, that's if we don't combine it.
if we don't combine it.
Yeah.
Well, but we have to, if we combine it, we're still going to need a public hearing, though. All right, do you want to?
But that would be to tell people that we're eliminating it,
Yeah,
and
and
so
let
it's
them to talk
it's a
about
huge
it.
change.
Yeah,
And again, the reason I'm saying that, we send it to the Township Board with these changes,
yeah,
and then 2 months later, we send it back to them for elimination.
yeah.
We don't look as if we're thinking things through properly.
Okay, we'll hang on to that one then. Then we need to hang on to enterprise service also then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do limited industrial since it's next.
You can see the changes we made. I mean, there's not
Pardon?
much. You can see the changes we made. We've talked about it before. If you have any questions, I'd try to answer them.
Well, the landscape and lawn care businesses was the one item because I said, well, they got to store their stuff inside because under here it says, under the permitted uses, it talks about principal business and products resulting from the principal business shall be stored within a completely enclosed building. So that's why my assumption was that having a landscape and lawn care business as a permitted use, it would store everything inside.
Unless the very last sentence of that is, of that 4002 that you read, is such products, materials, and equipment may be stored outdoors if a conditional use permit
Conditional
is
use.
therefore obtained in
Mhm.
accordance with this article. So if someone came in, let's say it was D&G Landscaping, and they said they're going to do like they told us at that meeting, they're going to store all their trucks inside, all the materials inside, permitted.
They're permitted.
But if all of a sudden they have to start storing things outdoors, where they wanted to go into the landscape business, start storing trees or wood chips or whatever, then it kicks it in, according to the 4202, to me, that would kick it into a conditional use situation.
Do we need to relist it again as a condition, excuse me, as a conditional use then? I see H under conditional use. It says outdoor storage of materials and equipment to be used as part of the principal business. It is conditional, so they could have the landscape and lawn care business as a permitted, and then their outdoor storage would be the conditional.
Yes,
Okay, so then this takes care of everything,
yes,
the way it is.
I think so.
Do we need to specify that the landscape and lawn care business does not have a nursery?
Does not have a nursery?
Nursery.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, well, if they have a nursery, They're going to need a lot of space, and then does that kick them into the conditional use?
Well, if they had a nursery, they'd probably need to go in ag zoning.
Right,
Yeah.
that would make sense. but-
Because these properties, the general industrial or limited industrial is like a 1 acre minimum. They're not going to be able to have a nursery on a 1 acre minimum.
Okay.
And there's not that much property even zoned commercial. So if someone was doing like a Christensen's nursery or something, the way our ordinance is currently written, that would be conditional use in the ag zone.
Mhm.
So you actually could do that in the agricultural zone.
Right. Okay. Does anybody else have anything with the limited industrial? All right. Now, this one's ready for public hearing, correct? Or do you want to do them all at once? No, we shouldn't do them all at once.
Yeah, I would, yes, I would agree. Let's kind of wait
All
and kind
at
of hit them
once.
together, yeah.
Okay. Then this will be the end of October probably when we see these. Okay. General industrial.
So that's Raytech and the lumberyard, right?
Yes, correct.
Is it beyond the lumberyard as well, or just the lumberyard?
Might be a little bit. Yeah, I think it's a little beyond the
Okay, so
lumberyard.
that's with the dog obedience, whatever the thing is over there, and garbage, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some 10-acre parcels, I think, in the back end of that square, right across from homes. So I was wondering about that.
Do they front on Nowler?
Yeah. If somebody assembled all of those, they could get to it, but, you know, without going at Nowler, but Nowler's a dirt road there.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just seems a little inappropriate right across from homes to have that district there, I mean, with those boundaries, but.
So you're concerned about the existing general industrial boundary as shown on that map?
Yeah, but we don't have to have it
Yeah.
affect what we're doing here.
Yeah.
But maybe think about it.
Yeah.
In the
And well, the other thing, with that, you have to remember too, that if someone was to develop in those districts, we have pretty extensive buffering requirements and things like that.
True.
So we would be screening and buffering any kind of use from adjacent residential properties. Not that that addresses your concern completely, but it wouldn't just be wide open.
Okay.
And that's why we're doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have any more concerns here with this one. When we do that, yeah. Okay. Enterprise service.
Well, Doug, if you're going to take a look at the combination of RO and enterprise, it may change this significantly. So
Yeah,
I think it's wise just time
yeah.
to look at that at both. Because you may add some options here that you feel relevant when you look at the parcels on Whitmore Lake Road that are in both of these.
Yeah, we may want to add some of the RO uses
Yes,
into
exactly.
this district. Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't want any nonconformities.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So you can bring this back to us then. We're good.
Yep.
Okay. So if everybody's good with that, we'll move on. We have no new business. So we have the minutes of our next meeting, of our last meeting, rather. Do you have something else, Mr. Kuzma? No?
No, I just, Mr. Brewer asked us to
Yeah, he was talking about the
consider
minutes.
those, and
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any real concern there or not.
Right. So this came up at our last meeting. Well, let's just deal with Mr. Brewer's comment here about the traffic. He was more concerned about the traffic impacts be satisfactory.
I'm sorry, Marlene, I can't.
Okay, sorry.
I can't understand much of what you're saying.
Okay. Mr. Brewer was mostly concerned about the other conditions on the conditional land use. Recommends the following conditions: that the planner's concerns enumerated be addressed, that the engineer's concerns that were enumerated be addressed, and that any nonconformities in the existing site be remediated, and that the traffic impacts be satisfactory to and/or remediated to the satisfaction of the Washtenaw County Road Commission. Now, what is your experience with the Road Commission? How lenient are they with businesses wanting to expand
Well, my experience with the road commission is that they have their standards and they hold to them.
Okay. So if an intersection would become very difficult to be passable, they would say, we're not going to allow that to happen.
Property owners have the right to appeal a request to the road commissioners themselves, and that's possible. I'm not sure how successful they would be. I'm sure they'll try to work with them to a certain degree, but I do know the road commission has their standards and they stick with them. And Brad can probably, I'm sure you've run into this, the road commissions as well.
Well, I don't know how much they could, like, short of a bypass lane or a decel lane kind of thing, I don't know that they could actually require some off-site, like the corner improvements for this guy. Just because he's the guy that tipped it over the scale doesn't make it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that they would have much of a leg to stand on, quite honestly, to force him to do something if that's the facts. I doubt that it's going to be, to tell you the truth. I mean, we know it's already a dicey, whatever. All of our information says it's not a great intersection, but how's this guy going to really affect it?
Right.
I want to ask this too. If we don't approve the minutes of our motion, then it can't be sent on to the Township Board as I understood it in the past. Is that correct or not correct? Because that's what the Township Board would look at, the approval of our minutes from our meeting.
Yeah, that's why he's asking us to have our council look at it to see if it passes muster.
Well, here's something else to think about. The Township Board motion is going to be the actual motion that gets reviewed in the future. Your motion is a recommendation.
That's right, we're recommendation.
You're recommending only.
Okay.
So if there is a issue, it can be resolved at the Township Board.
Okay.
Because,
well, and in the meantime, could.
We should make sure that it's.
Yeah, is it worth passing it on to our township attorney and say, take a look at this and see if there's a reason?
And again, I'm just mentioning that, is it proper then, so this could not go on Township Board agenda until we approve their minutes. Am I correct in understanding that from past?
That was the motion we passed, though. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's accurate. That was the motion we passed. So, I can't say that I would say, no, we can't approve that, but he should take a look at it before, well, no, he should review this before I would think, before before the Board of Trustees deals with it. But I don't think it affects our motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Nowatzki did pick up a copy of the minutes this afternoon as well.
Yeah. Okay. And we will have a site plan to deal with also, that we can manage to to control what happens on that site. So, okay. I'm all right with approving the minutes, because that's what we passed at our meeting. Okay.
So page one of them?
Well, let's go through. Page 1. Any changes? Page 2.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Under my discussion, it says that
Um.
the property taxes were not paid. It's the personal property taxes.
When we get to that, yeah.
That's on page 2. I also pointed out that the sewer bill was delinquent.
Okay, so we will add personal property taxes under Mr. Brewer's comment, so that'll be the first real paragraph. Well, it'll be the third paragraph from the bottom on the second column. So right in the middle, it says, payment of personal property taxes are or have been delinquent for this site. So where did you see sewer?
It's in the...
Oh, later on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any more changes on page 2? Page 3?
Page 3 is where the first, the bill of sewer charges and information.
Can you,
It's in the second column, 1, 2, 3.
If somebody down there is making a change, I can't hear it.
no, we're just talking about where the sewer stuff is. There's no change.
Paragraph down right in the middle. Where is it? Chick said there are delinquent sewer charges for this site, and Lasky said he was made aware of this 60 days ago, and he has not received the bill.
Okay. Okay. So it's in here. I have a change at the top of the first column. It says, takes materials from his site to the junkyard once a month. Any more changes on page 3?
You didn't see that.
Is there- we make
There was a
change?
once,
We
just,
made a
just,
change
it
just
says one a
once,
month, it should be once a month.
Once a month, at the
The
top.
very top of the first column
Yep.
on page 3.
Sorry, Lisa. Okay, page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Okay. Okay, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes as amended?
Motion to adopt the minutes as amended from the regular meeting of August 20th, 2014 of the Northfield Township Planning Commission.
Okay, motion by Ms. Chick, support by
Support?
Mr. Kuzno. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Well, we are at comments from the commissioners. Let's start with Mr. Iaquinto.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, Janet, last meeting, we discussed the recommendations for conditional uses being sent to the Township Board for approval, and about, again, I mentioned it because one of your board members mentioned it. Is that going back in front of the board?
Yep, it should be on the, I asked for it to be on the September, I'm sorry. I asked for that to be on the September 9th agenda.
Okay, perfect, awesome, thank you.
Okay, good. Do you have anything else, Mr. Iaquinto?
No, that's it,
No?
thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Chick?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, I don't either. Okay, Mr. Kuzno?
Nope, no comment.
No comments, okay. a call to the public? We have plenty of time. No? Okay. Thank you. And so our next regular meeting, which was scheduled for September 17th, will be canceled. I will be out of town, and a couple of other members may be out of town also. So our next meeting will be October 1st. So all of you out there watching on TV, check our agenda to see what's on it. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be dealing with at that point. And I'll see you in October. Thank you.
Motion adjourned.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Iaquinto, support by Ms. Chick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got some new books for you guys.
The old ones, can we leave here? Well, they recycle it.